We just wanted you to hear it from us directly. That was the line. That's how they began the conversation that ended my belief in family fairness. I sat there in the living room I practically grew up in, my back rigid against the couch that still had the same faded blue cushions from my teenage years. My parents, seated side by side like news anchors delivering a story they weren't sure how I'd take, looked me in the eye calm, measured, rehearsed. And then they said it. They told me they were finalizing their will. That everything, the house, the savings, the land, even Dad's rare coin collection, was going to my siblings. Not split evenly. Not with some long explanation of fairness. Just, not to me. Not a cent. I laughed at first. I honestly thought it was a joke. My parents weren't wealthy, but they weren't cruel either. Or at least, I didn't think they were. I waited for the punchline. But their faces didn't change. My mother even gave that tight-lipped smile she always used when she was trying not to seem harsh. "It's not that we don't love you," she said, eyes flicking to the floor. "But we think you're fine. You've always been independent. You don't need as much as they do." I stared at them. My chest felt hollow. They weren't punishing me, they claimed. Just excluding me. I wish I could say this came out of nowhere. But in hindsight, maybe this had been building for years. The golden child older brother. The struggling younger sister. And me? The one who didn't ask for help. The one who left home early, made her way through college with 3 jobs, never looked back. I always thought being strong would mean they'd be proud. That I'd earned respect. But now I was learning what it really meant to be the strong one in a family like mine. It meant being the one they assumed would be fine without them. The one they didn't need to protect. The one they could forget. And I was done pretending it didn't hurt. The silence that followed their announcement stretched on like a thick fog. My dad cleared his throat, like he expected me to say something. Maybe thank them for their honesty. Maybe smile and say I understood. I didn't. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling just enough for me to notice, and said the only thing that came to mind. "Okay, that's all. Just okay." I couldn't find the words for the storm inside me. I didn't want to cry in front of them. I wouldn't give them that. I left without another word. Later that night, my phone lit up with a message from my older brother, Nate. "Hey, Mom and Dad said you were over today. You good?" That was his version of checking in. Short. Impersonal. Nate had always been the favorite. The prodigal son who could do no wrong, even when he screwed up repeatedly. Dropped out of college, bounced from job to job, and still somehow ended up managing Dad's old business. And when he messed that up, too, they blamed the economy. I stared at the message for a while before typing out. They told me about the will. He read it. Didn't reply. The next day, I met up with my younger sister, Lena, for coffee. I needed to see if this insanity extended beyond my parents. She was 26, still living at home, supposedly getting her life back on track. She hugged me tightly when she saw me, like nothing was wrong, like we were still kids walking home from school together. "You talked to Mom and Dad?" I asked as we sat down. She nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, they mentioned they had a talk with you." And? Lena sighed. "I didn't ask for anything, you know. I never asked to be in the will. They just said they wanted to make sure I'd be okay. And I won't be?" She winced. "No, that's not what I mean. It's just, you've always had your life together. You're good. I'm still figuring stuff out. Nate's still trying to get the shop running again. And I'm the fallback plan, right?" I snapped. The one who doesn't need anything because I never ask for anything. She flinched, but didn't deny it. That hurt worse. Growing up, I was the fixer. The one who cleaned up Lena's messes, who covered for Nate when he'd sneak out, who held it all together while our parents worked overtime and forgot birthdays. I never made a fuss. I thought that made me strong. But strength, I was learning, made me invisible. I started revisiting moments I had buried, times I'd needed help but didn't ask. The time I broke down in my college dorm room after getting laid off and still sent Mom a birthday card. The time I loaned Nate money I never got back. The time Lena begged me to cover for her DUI and I did, because I didn't want our parents to stop loving her. Maybe they thought I was too capable to hurt. Or maybe they just loved my silence more than my presence. A few days later, my mom called. "We feel like you're angry," she said gently, like she was handling a fragile object. "I am angry," I said. There was a pause. "We didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did." "You don't understand. We just thought this was fair. Fair would be treating me like I mattered. Like I was part of this family." She went quiet. Then, softly, "You always seemed so strong." There it was again. "I'm not made of stone," I whispered. "You can't just cut me out and expect me to be fine with it." "I'm sorry," she said, but it felt more like an apology for my reaction than for the decision itself. The worst part wasn't the money. I didn't need their house. I had my own apartment, my own life. It was what their decision meant. It meant that all the years I held it together didn't count. That being dependable wasn't worth remembering. That being fine meant being forgotten. And now I had to decide what to do with that truth. Because once you see your place in your family clearly, you can't unsee it. You either accept it, or you start rewriting the story for yourself. And I was done playing the background character in theirs. I didn't go home for a while. Not just physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I pulled away from them all. Texts went unread. Calls unanswered. I told myself I was too busy, drowning in deadlines and meetings. But the truth was simpler. I couldn't stand the sound of their voices. Couldn't stomach their casual guilt or the way they talked around the damage they caused. Instead, I dove into work. Early mornings, late nights, a schedule packed so tight there was no room left to think. That was my survival tactic. If I kept moving, maybe the betrayal wouldn't catch up to me. But grief always finds a crack. And mine came in the form of an email. Subject line: Dad's health update. Sent by Nate. I stared at it for 5 minutes before clicking it open. Dad's blood pressure's been through the roof. Doctors concerned about stress. They think it's from everything going on with the family. Thought you should know. No apology. No warmth. Just a subtle, guilt-laced reminder that this was somehow my fault. That night I lay awake, my apartment dead quiet around me, staring at the ceiling. Did they think I wanted this? That I enjoyed being the outsider? Was I supposed to pretend nothing had happened just because Dad had a scare? Because if I'm being honest, part of me did feel something. Not just anger or pain, but guilt. That stubborn child inside me still wanted to be seen, still wanted to be the daughter they reached out to when things went wrong. But the adult in me was tired of begging for scraps. 2 days later, I met with my therapist. I'd started seeing her 6 months prior, mostly for anxiety, the kind that lingered after years of being everything for everyone. She listened as I unpacked it all: the will, the silence, the email. When I finally stopped talking, she said something that clung to my bones. "You keep trying to earn love by being useful, but love doesn't need proof." That hit harder than anything my family ever said. She was right. I'd spent my whole life proving my worth, through grades, through independence, through sacrifice. I kept thinking if I just did enough, they'd love me equally. Fairly. But some families don't operate on fairness. Some love louder when there's struggle. Others confuse neediness with closeness. And some just don't see what they're breaking until it's too late. I broke the silence with Lena first. She came over one night, uninvited, holding takeout and wearing that sheepish expression I knew too well. "I miss you," she said as I opened the door. I let her in. She didn't say much at first. Just unpacked the food, poured wine, and waited. And then, halfway through her spring rolls, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked up. For what? For not saying anything. For letting them do that to you. She sounded like a child. Lost. Wrecked. And I saw it then. She wasn't just benefiting from the will. She was trapped by it too. Our parents had tied love to dependency, and she'd grown up drinking it like medicine. "I didn't ask for it," she added. "I swear I didn't." "I know," I said. And I meant it. But knowing didn't erase the pain. "I needed you to speak up," I said. To say something when they treated me like I didn't matter. She nodded, eyes brimming. I should have. I was scared they'd cut me off too. There it was. The truth. We were all just trying to survive different versions of the same storm. Still, Nothing changed with Nate. He didn't reach out again. And when I bumped into him at a grocery store weeks later, he barely made eye contact. "Hey," he said, like we were distant coworkers. "Hey." I didn't press him. I didn't ask why he hadn't called. I didn't ask how Dad was. Let him live in his silence. I had mine too. But the real confrontation came from my parents. Of course it did. It was my mother who showed up unannounced, standing at my apartment door like she'd rehearsed every word of her speech. "I know we hurt you," she began. "But this family is falling apart." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "It's been falling apart. You're just noticing now." She flinched. "Your father's not well. And I'm sorry for that." "I really am. But his health doesn't erase what you did." She tried to smile. "Maybe we made a mistake." I stared at her. "Maybe?" She sighed. "We thought we were helping your siblings. By abandoning me? You've always been so capable. We thought you didn't need us." That word again. Capable. Like a curse disguised as a compliment. I stepped back, motioning her inside. "Let's talk." We sat in the kitchen, and for the first time, I laid everything out. The times I needed help and never got it. The years I swallowed pain to keep the peace. The way they made me feel like love was something I had to earn. My mom cried. I didn't. I was past tears. She promised to revisit the will. I told her that wasn't the point anymore. "I don't want your house," I said. "I wanted to feel like I was your child, not just your success story." She nodded slowly, wiping her cheeks. "I see you now," she whispered. "Do you?" I asked. "Or are you just afraid I'll leave and not come back?" There was no answer. I wish I could say things got better overnight. They didn't. Dad didn't call. Nate stayed distant. My mother tried, but the gap between us was wide and uneven. But something inside me had shifted. I stopped trying to prove myself. I stopped showing up to every crisis just to be ignored afterward. I started building boundaries that didn't come with guilt. I reconnected with old friends. I took a weekend trip alone for the first time in years. I laughed more, cried less, stood up straighter. And when my parents called again, this time asking if we could all meet to talk things through, I said no. Not yet. Because for once in my life, I would decide when I was ready. And I wasn't done healing. Not yet. I still think about that moment sometimes, the one where they told me, so casually, that I was being left out. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I was the strong one. And I wonder if they'll ever realize that being strong wasn't my choice. It was just the role no one else wanted to play. The night of the family dinner, I almost didn't go. It was Lena who called me, her voice nervous and hopeful. "They want to talk. All of us." Mom said Dad's been thinking about things. I hesitated, keys in my hand, heart pounding. It felt like walking into a fire I'd already been burned by. But something told me this wasn't just about them anymore. It was about me, choosing to face what had broken me instead of running from it. So I went. When I arrived at the house, it was like stepping into a memory. The smell of old pine cleaner and my mother's pot roast clung to the walls. Nate was already there, sitting stiffly at the table with his arms crossed. Lena offered a soft smile from the couch. Then Dad walked in, thinner than I remembered. His once commanding presence had shrunk into something frail and unsure. But his eyes, those still held weight. He cleared his throat. "We've made mistakes. I've made mistakes." I raised my eyebrows. That was new. I was raised to believe that you take care of the ones who need the most. I thought I was doing that. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that needing someone doesn't always look like weakness. My throat tightened. He looked directly at me. "I should have seen you, too. The way you held yourself together. The things you never asked for. That wasn't strength, it was survival." The room fell silent. "I've revised the will," he continued. "Not just because it's fair, but because you deserve to be honored for everything you gave this family, even when we didn't know how to thank you." I swallowed hard, unsure what to say. My whole life, I'd waited for recognition. For someone, anyone, to say I see you. And now, finally, he had. But this wasn't about the will anymore. It was about whether I could forgive. Nate shifted in his seat. I didn't mean to shut you out, he muttered. I just didn't know what to say. Lena reached for my hand under the table. Her fingers were cold but steady. I took a deep breath. I don't want apologies because I made you feel guilty. I want honesty. I want to stop pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. My mom nodded through her tears. We're ready to be honest. Then we can start over, I said. But on equal ground. No more strong one, weak one. Just family. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever asked for. But this time, I didn't ask it as the daughter trying to earn her place. I asked as the woman finally claiming it. Things didn't magically fall into place after that night. There were no sweeping hugs or perfect family group photos. No sudden transformation into the sitcom version of healthy and healed. But there was something better: effort. Small, shaky, sometimes awkward, but effort. My dad started calling once a week. Not to give advice. Not to lecture. Just to talk. We spoke about simple things: weather, books, the news. At first, it felt forced. But eventually, the silences between us grew comfortable instead of tense. Mom began sending texts. Little things: thinking of you, or saw this and it made me smile. They weren't grand gestures, but they mattered. Because for the first time, she was reaching out without expecting anything in return. Lena and I grew closer, not just in sisterhood but in truth. We started speaking honestly about our childhood, the guilt we carried, the parts of us that had never been allowed to be messy. We didn't need to fix each other. We just listened. That was enough. Even Nate, in his reserved way, started making space. He apologized again, in his own stumbling language, by offering to help with a project I was working on, by showing up at a local talk I was giving. He never said the words, "I was wrong," but his actions filled in the silence where those words should have been. And as for the will, yes, it was updated. Evenly split. But by then, it no longer felt like the point. I didn't care about what I would or wouldn't inherit. I cared that I was finally seen. One weekend, a few months later, I visited the family home again. Just me and my parents. We sat in the backyard, the same one where I used to sneak away with books just to escape the noise. Now we sat together, quiet, peaceful, no expectations. My dad looked over at me and said, we thought we were protecting you by not worrying about you. We didn't realize we were leaving you alone. I nodded. I know. You're still the strongest one, he added. I smiled, but this time I shook my head. No, I'm just not hiding it anymore when I'm not okay. He looked at me for a moment, then smiled back. Good. And in that moment, I felt it, not just love, but respect. The kind I didn't have to earn by carrying everyone else's weight. I still carry pieces of that old pain. I still flinch sometimes when I feel forgotten. But now I speak up. I ask. I say when something hurts. And slowly, the people around me are learning how to respond. I'm not the background character anymore. I'm not just the strong one. I'm someone who finally understands that strength doesn't mean silence. And family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to be loved. It means being seen. It means being real. And I'm finally ready to be both. I used to believe that love meant endurance. That the more I could take, the more I could swallow, suppress, and carry without complaint, the more valuable I'd be to the people around me. But I don't believe that anymore. Love shouldn't require erasure. It shouldn't mean being the quiet one in the corner, clapping for everyone else while no one notices you're bleeding. I thought being strong meant I didn't need anything. Now I know that being strong means having the courage to admit when you do. My parents made a choice when they left me out of their will. A choice rooted in old thinking, in outdated ideas of what it means to be successful or resilient. And for a while, I let that choice define me. I let it wound me deeper than I wanted to admit. But I'm not living for their validation anymore. I'm living for me. For the version of me that deserved love without needing to earn it. For the girl who learned to survive and the woman who is learning to thrive. There are still moments of distance. Still awkward silences. But now, they're filled with possibility, not pain. With honesty, not obligation. And maybe that's what healing looks like. Not a perfect picture, but a quiet shift. A brave step forward. I was the forgotten one. Now I'm unforgettable. And that's more than enough.